Thank you very much for coming today. What a beautiful spring day. And I have to say that Dapeng's work really inspired me today. Just have something colorful. And it's wonderful to have you. And thank you, Isabel, for the generous introduction. And thank you, Simon and Lina, for the invitation to invite me here to have a conversation with Dapeng. Dapeng and I, we actually met very long time ago when we were students at Sydney University, and we do have our supervisor at the time, Professor John Clark here, a really significant figure who established Asian art history in Australia here. So it's good to have you in the audience. Before I start, I'm sure that all of you have walked around and look at the work, and as Isabel introduced, Dapeng was really, really interested in landscape. Why landscape?
Hello? That's the same problem. Okay.
Maybe wait a little bit, yeah.
Is it alright? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Obviously, a lot of the time, if for the people that they don't know my work, and when I'm trying to introduce my work to the people, right, I'm familiar with my work, and I will often say landscape, that is my subject matter, but then I also at the same time be reluctant to call it landscape. Yeah, and I can have a chance to explain this, because when we say the English word landscape, we really, especially as a genre in painting, we are thinking of the type of painting that emerged in Europe in around the 16th and 17th century, because we know that landscape painting as a genre emerged rather late, like in the course of art history. But then, if we say that in Chinese, translate landscape to Chinese, 风景画, again, that carries the European tradition. But really, my inspiration is from the landscape painting in pre-modern China, which is not the same as what we understand of landscape painting. It's more precisely called 山水画, which literally translated to English as the mountain and water painting. But then what's the difference? That's actually a very interesting subject to discuss. What is the pre-modern landscape art in China, how it differs to the European tradition? And something I can say is that the traditional landscape painting in China appeared much earlier than what happened in Europe. In Europe, landscape first appeared as the background in a lot of portraiture works, or like a mythical type of subjects, biblical themes. So you see landscape in the backdrop. And same thing in China, it dated back very early, even to the pre-Tang period. And that was, I'm talking about more than 1,000 years ago. But then in around 1,000 years ago, around the Song Dynasty, landscape in China became like an independent genre in painting, and taken over a lot of figurative art that was quite popular in the Tang period. And very interestingly, some studies claim that it has something to do with the ethnic groups of people in China, because we know that the main ethnic group of people in China are Han people, which I am, and but then there are a lot of other ethnic groups in China, like more than 50 different types. And the Tang people, they were not entirely Han. Yeah, they are a mix of Han people and the nomad people from the north, the people on horseback. And a lot of anthropologists study art or address subjects on art. They will look into the lineage of the bloodline and try to review the differences on the personalities and characters among different people such as probably you'll be more familiar with how European art historian will talk about how Latin people are different to the northern German origin people, and how does the art ultimately look different. And same thing in China. So Tang people, when they have the blood of the Norma people, they just show completely different character to Han people, right?
Really, quite a context for European landscape and Chinese landscape, and indeed that as far as I know, and you are really, really inspired, and you also a big fan of the Chinese masters, the Chinese master landscape painters, and as you say that the San Shui Hua, the mountain and water painting, and I remember that your portrait of Cao Ying, the Chinese curator, in art galleries as well, and you typically use the Lan Lü San Shui genre, the blue and green landscape. And again, I could see some of that traces of the blue and green here in your new body of work. And we do see a lot of mountain and waters and sky. But if we look carefully, they're not just the mountain and water. We could see those geometric shapes that, penetrating those skies, waters, and mountains and rocks floating. Could you tell us a little bit more about these shapes that's floating in between, that's inviting us to looking at this mountain and water in very different perspective? Could you tell us a little bit more about those abstract shapes?
Yeah, I did have the intention to add complexity to the perspectives, and especially how I made all the shapes translucent rather than just adopting from the hard edge geometric art, which most of the colors used in those genre are just like they're not translucent, they're opaque. Yeah. But how I started looking to the geometric shapes is because so after I moved to Australia, right, I felt like the art history, especially the European art history I learned back in China, it just quite wasn't enough. So art class in China back then was never a main thing. It usually got subsidized by the so-called main subject. Yeah.
Chinese, English, and maths.
Yeah, that's right. yeah. Especially when the students were preparing for exams, the teacher will always say, okay, so no sports class today, no art class today, no music today, and we're gonna do more math papers. So yeah, but we did have the art education went on for many years, all through middle school, high school period, and all I remember is probably some classes on the Renaissance art, and then stopped at the Impressionism. That's it. But when I came to Australia, I just felt like there's a big gap in what I know of the art history. But so much has happened after in the modern period, stepped into the contemporary period, and the very significant art movements happening in America post-war, post-Second World War, and I just pushed myself very hard to catch up on the discourse that I missed out.
Me too.
Yeah. And there were a few particular areas that I was very much drawn to, like including minimalism and color field painting, and just I was very drawn to those styles and started doing experiments on geometric shapes. And so that's one reason, like probably the more aesthetic reason. It drawn me intuitively, like the colors and forms. And then if I dive deeper to ask why I would have used those shapes in my paintings, it probably has a deeper level of meaning, which is also because all of this series of works, they all started around COVID time, so like 4 or 5 years ago. around COVID times, and I included a few smaller study pieces. Those smaller ones, not stretched. You see them here and there in this show. So those were the first experiments I did, following my interest in the geometrics and the color field and all that. But then in the COVID, I also started reading and listening to a lot of philosophy classes. So to give me a greater appreciation and understanding towards art history and or the civilization, the European civilization, in general. Because I think philosophy is at the center, it's the core of all of this, what we create today. And then I started looking into, I'm an enthusiast in philosophy, but it's still too big for me.
Yeah. You did mention, we had a chat before, and you mentioned all those smaller painting here that you produced during pandemic, and we were in lockdown and you could not go out, and those sort of lines and spaces you created at the time that really actually is a inside space. So can I say that it is those human worlds that the house that you live in, the lines, the joints between wall, the corners that you could observe when you are in lockdown that inspire those shapes. Because I was talking to Simon as well, that Simon also really interested in taking photos of buildings, and as an architect, I'm sure that line and shape and forms are essential for an architect. And for you as an artist, I really can feel those, the landscape outside is meeting with the indoor environment you are in. So with those shapes that, resonated those times that you were in lockdown producing those early work of indoor space?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually also relating to the two main types of artists. One type that they commit to the studio works, which is me, myself. And then there's especially when we talk about landscape art, there are a big group of artists that they started landscape art based on planning. So based on actually direct observation of the nature, which is not my case. Because every artist have their own situation, I still have a young family and my own work habit, so I'm always inside, even not in lockdown. And then, so that's gonna produce different result to what you produce. So, and of course there are a lot of observation related elements in my works, but most of the elements and contents you see in my paintings, they're imaginary. Yeah, most of them. I don't have any reference when I started sketching out, trying out the color arrangement, composition, mountain forms, all of those are based on my imagination. So if I have to draw some examples, probably like Frida Kahlo, her painting just is a reflection of her inner psyche. And because of her condition, how she was involved in those terrible accidents and she's not quite mobilized. Yeah, of course she traveled around, she did, but she's committed to create works based on imagination, which is opposed to some other artists that we are familiar, like Georgia O'Keeffe. Although Georgia O'Keeffe is also a studio artist, but she did, I would say that she did use more direct observation of the natural elements because she did travel more. But
Great. So like you are a wanderer using your mind, not your feet, which is amazing work that you have produced by those imagination. Of course, years and years of study on those Chinese masters and literati painting. And in some sense, you are the same with them because a lot of literati painters, they actually use their imagination to paint those, beautiful mountains, the forests, the fishermen on a lake in the stream between valleys of the mountain. That's their dream of, retirement to live in the mountain, but not necessarily they could really wander around the mountain all the time, because most of the time they were not just amateur artists, but also, the official in court working for the emperors. So just, similar that you are in your studio imagining those landscapes that we could see here. And another thing is, as we are all aware, that the exhibition title is In Light Visual. So you are an urban dweller, and you are dwelling in your studio, but your mind is, of course, so open and to this wonderful world or different worlds that you have imagined. One thing that really sort of triggered me is those lights. You could see the lights that radiate through the colors, through the cameras, it's really illuminated. That you could see they are growing. And could you tell us a little bit about the lights and how you capture them? And we are in Australia. We know that we have really harsh light, but the lights you capture here is really soft and beautiful and quiet and subtle. Could you tell us a little bit more about the lights in how you capture them through your cameras or brush?
Yeah. So there are a few accounts that I want to talk about how I use light in this body of work. First of all is to push my the possibility in how I understand oil paint is on the material. Because a lot of the result you can achieve is limited by what sort of material you're using. So one thing is related to the material use, and I take advantage of the modern paints. And we know a lot of the old masters, they use very limited palette. Yeah, like Rembrandt's period, or even his later artists, like they don't have the abundance of the color range of what we have today on all those synthetic paints, right? Because not all of them mineral based. So I did take advantage of a lot of the exciting new colors that came into the material production line. And I also experimented a lot on oil, because oil is such a complex medium. Even though, about more than 100 years ago, Paul Cézanne already said painting is that, because, basically from his generation, he can already see all the possibilities are already there, the styles are already there. But yes, maybe, but just then on a personal level, I feel like I still have a lot of, there are still a lot of uncharted territories for me to discover in oil paint. So, and I just want to explore that possibility on my end of how I can represent light. Yeah, so that's like a one step up, because I wasn't really focusing in light in my previous works. Probably this is the first time. Of course you see light, because light is related to color. But but they can't be separated. But this one, I already have like a premeditated thought that I will focus on that. And another thing, that's because what is really drawn me to express the feeling on the light is the natural light. So that's what you see here. All of this is natural light. It's not the artificial light, but now we're actually immersed in probably in artificial light. Yeah, because we stay. Yeah, no one will go to bed after dinner, right? Yeah, but what moves me are not artificial light. Those are those rare moments of natural light. And a lot of those, because I live in the hills and I do drive a lot of the slopey ways, you know, drive my children to school, to and from school, and yeah, those are the normal days. But then I will see those sudden moments that really moves me. It's just the sky color, or the blue mountains. It changes color all the time, and sometimes clear, sometimes in the mist. And I did take photos, but when I created these works, I never look at any of those photos. I try to have my own interpretation on the color variations, and to capture those moments. Yeah.
Great. When I first saw this body of work, that I could see many different lights at different time and different seasons. They have morning, sunrise, and there's like beautiful light, sun rays in the late afternoon, or the dusk. There might be winter lights, and there might be spring lights. And definitely I don't see many sort of bright summer hush lights here. And one thing that I really sort of catch my mind is this, you are talking about your children, and I do have a young child as well who really loves sun catcher. For those who know what sun catcher is, those like really beautiful, made of stained glass that you typically will see maybe in church or some really old Federation houses in Australia. Those beautiful stained glass or the sun catcher that you put it against the sun rays, and through that you can filter the sun rays, and then you can see in different color. So I know that all this form and shapes, probably different people will read it differently, but for me I feel like a sun catcher, that you through this lens, sun catcher, you look into this imagined landscape and you give it another layers of colors than whatever natural color, natural light it is. So in a way that is really inviting people to think that it's not just a natural, it's sort of you have that human world, human gaze through this two-dimensional canvas. And you mentioned light, and you said that light and color, they're related, because without light we can't see color. For us, if anyone learn about physics, I think this is how we learn about light.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. And color, very vibrant, as you can see here, and really saturated. And you did mention about the color field and all this modernism, even postmodernist painter. They use so much color, and the hard edge school that using really opaque color field as well. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and how you adapt this really American modernist painter into a landscape that you always sort of inspired by the Chinese masters?
Yeah, very good question, because we all know that traditional Chinese landscape painting, they are sort of monotone. Because there were two types of painters: the academy painter, that hired by the emperors, or we can call them the court painters, and then on the other hand we have the literati painters, which, as Shuxia mentioned earlier, they were officials that served the government, but then they pursue art as a hobby. So literati painter just means unprofessional painter. They don't make their life making paintings. And that's the reason why ink and water painting was the mainstream, because if you're not a professional painter hired by the court, you're not going to be able to afford colored pigments. As simple as that. And then, like the portrait I did for Yintao, that I showed reference to the blue and green painting, that was actually a type of court painting, if you see the blue and green, because to be able to make that sort of blue and green, you actually need to grind semi-gems into pigments, and the core painters, they supplied by the core, they will use real gold like in the paint. It's not achievable by the literati painters. And then because the literati tradition became so big, and not just in China, in the whole Eastern Asia, the Pan-Eastern, Japan, Korea, black and white is the standard aesthetics when we talk about traditional Eastern art. And I think that somehow has profoundly affected contemporary artists working in China. And also because, like you mentioned, color theory was in physics. So we know that Monet's best friend was scientist in physics. Because they study color, they study spectrum, and they have to study science. And that's something missed in China. And again, I have to blame the art education that I won't think I received enough education in color theory and all that. But then I'm so interested in color. So how I started that was, there was partly this motivation in me that I want to challenge that. Because I also see, I can't speak like for the other Chinese artists or artists originating in China, that I might think that a lot of them need to challenge themselves more on color. It's due to history, not to, has something to do with history. Then personally, I took that challenge and I spent a long time experimenting on the possibility of how I can arrange colors in my own works. And then, in the same time, I was influenced by the post-war color field painters by them, but then I don't want to show resemblance to their works. So that's the.
Great, thank you. That we really sort of delve deep into Dapeng's artistic practice, and also both the Chinese, the Eastern art history and European art history that inform his practice, and how that Dapeng is really trying to take up the challenge and create, using that tension actually to blend into his canvases here, that we could see a sense of harmony in it, which is, I think it's quite successful. And when we sort of talk about the practice itself, the painting, the oil painting, before I came to see this exhibition and just looking at the images, they are so flat. Like the camera is so flat in terms of typically when we look at oil painting, as a practitioner or people you do oil painting, that you can add a lot of color, a lot of layer, to cover up, and then one layer is totally different from another layer depending on maybe two weeks later. You don't feel like you want to change it totally. So we could see that a lot in conservation, and you look at those old masters painting. When you put X-ray on it, you see different layers. I could not see those layers on your canvas. I nearly thought that that's not oil until you told me, and I came here and you said that's oil. It really requires skill to do this, to make it so flat using oil. Could you share a little bit of your secrets? how to do that?
And again, that's a limitation I set up for myself. And again, that's connected to traditional Chinese landscape painting, because we know that Liu Bai, to use the void, is a focus point in Chinese painting, traditional Chinese painting. So although I'm using oil paint and I can cover up, but I gave myself a very difficult task, is that I want to achieve that sort of surface quality. Oil paint, they make reflections. sometimes it depends on how much medium you mix in, right? Sometimes it can be more shiny, sometimes it's more matte if you mix solvent into it. So that's actually part of my practice that I'm trying to control that without using the final varnish. Because you can use the final varnish for any one of you who is familiar with painting. You know that, especially when you're indirect painter, meaning the painting will take more than one session to be completed, and at the end, the oil painting is not going to look so nice. It's going to have different sorts of patches of reflections, and traditionally, painter will use a varnish to even everything up. But I avoided that. I just want natural look, but then I don't want any unwanted reflection, so I control the process. Yeah, and then why is it relating to the use of void in Chinese painting is I usually will do the variation of the gradation of color first, and then that I consider that as my void. And then I'll jump on to paint the mountain forms and the geometric shapes. I usually can't have a lot of redos. Yeah. Of course I do, because sometimes a section just not gonna work out. So I will try to save it to work on that one section multiple times. Sometimes, because I always hope to achieve the immediacy in my in the marks I left on the canvas. I try to, and again, that's if you look closely, some of the things, for example, that one at the corner, there are a lot of brush stroke that I try to achieve with the finished result with one go, and that's it. And so that's from calligraphy, that's from ink and water painting. But sometimes it's just not gonna happen, like in the bad day. You know, like it's not gonna happen, and I have to redo. Yeah, I have to redo. If the redo doesn't work, the whole thing just gone. The whole thing, you have to redo the whole thing. Yeah, and because I can't cover up my paintings because I'm not the impasto type of painter, so I need to rip the canvas off. I need to restretch. I can't just paint on top of it if it's already dried up.
Right.
Yeah, so it's within those limitations and my own desire to achieve that particular type of surface quality that resulted in the development of the technique in between. That a lot of people thought I used spray guns, but I didn't. Yeah, if you look closely, you will see some paintings are actually quite thick and they have layers. If you look close to the edges, you'll be able to see. That's because sometimes the gradation of color works out with one or two layers, sometimes it doesn't. When it doesn't, I can, revisit it. I will redo it, so it will be thicker. Yeah. So flatness, yes, but not necessarily very thin.
So it takes a lot of planning and also skill to achieve that flatness. Like it looks simple, but then you could see a lot of control, but then those immediacy that those brush work that normally we could see in the traditional oil painting, if you look carefully, they are still there. Great, thank you. One question, we look at so much on the painting itself, and a lot of us sort of always forget about the title, but as an art historian myself, and you have an art history background, we always look at the title, and then I can't help myself to think they are as poetic as your painting. And there's a lot of keywords here, autumn water, unseen dancer, night, stars in waiting, and memory, and every flower is a soul. Could you tell us a little bit about those titles and how you come about? Because I know no matter as a curator or as an artist, naming and having a title is always quite difficult.
Yeah. I spent like 2 full days on the titles, I think. Yeah, because when you finish the work, you're so excited, and then there are a lot of other works. Because I also take photographs myself and edit the photographs myself, and titles, yes. And very interestingly, most of the titles comes after the work is done, because I think that's part of the beauty in creativity, that you can't really anticipate the result. Yeah, and I won't even be able to see that until I finish all the work. I notice, okay, I have 2 paintings that they really look like night scenes. And then I use, I skim through a lot of poems to find inspiration for the titles. Is because they are metaphorical and they're not like directly related to the picture. I'm not inclined just to name my paintings such as that one, a blue and orange mountain. Yes, so that's why I skim through poem books to find indirect, but more attached to what I feel. Yeah, more close to what I feel. So I try to get inspired by those lines in the poems. Yeah, so I skim through a lot of T.S. Eliot and Hermann Hesse, including Shakespeare. Yeah, like to get to work out those titles.
So that one is not just Orange Mountain. It's called Gentle Flame. Right. Thank you. And I think I have the last question, so I can open the floor to the audience if you have a question. My last question, of course, about what's next. What's your plan? I've been following, your painting, your artistic trajectory for a long time, and I could see that this is a really mature body of work already for this series to choosing the abstract form, the mountain, and really vibrant color. Do you have a plan in the future, to continue this form or even the subject matter?
For myself, I love to make changes, and I sometimes feel that the norm in the art circle now, that is not. I can't really fully appreciate that. I think especially for our students, they were too young trying to establish a recognizable language, because I think that should come more organically along your career. It shouldn't be an aim to try to establish a language. And then for me, so I was at the very beginning naturally drawn to get inspiration from Shui painting, but I also have other interests. I'm interested in so many things, not just this type of art you see here. And I did experiments. Simon knows that. Yeah, that I always make different things. And for the exhibition I did with Simon 2 years ago, I tried to create some commentary works and then using text over painting and using fun images from online images. So that was also relating to what I wrote in the statement about images. So I think we need to be critical to what those images we have been immersed in for, in the recent digital age. There are a lot of questions should be raised about that, but that's another topic. But then I have those few different lines that I want to pursue, and I do create do random works, studio works that I don't really show. Yeah, and I think for me, somehow at a point, a lot of the seemingly unrelated things I did in the past, they will come together at one point. But then for the future, I think I don't want to restrict myself, but I'm in the same time restricted by by the standard, by the norm. But I do want to find some sort of freedom in between. And all these works are not quite directly related to politics, social issues, all that. But I do have my own, reaction towards things happening now. So perhaps that's a possible thing that I will resume that I already tried like 2 years ago with those commentary related works. Yeah, and again, that's the human factor in landscape art, because in traditional Chinese landscape art, it's not really about landscape. It's metaphorical. It's about the inner world. Yeah, it's still about human being. Yeah, it's not really about the physical landscape. And then that's why in Chinese art, it's always the human and nature relationship at the center. So then I will just naturally bring in like probably my commentary work as the human part, and I will still keep my interest in the natural part, landscape part. Yes.
Yeah, so wrapping up with the human conditions in the artistic practice is always, the center for, all our artists, for art historian, myself, and curators as well. Thank you, Dapeng, for this. Let's give Dapeng a round of applause.
Thank you everyone for
For sharing. Yeah, and I will open up the floor in case we have any audience would like to ask a question to Dapeng or myself. Please feel free to ask questions.
Okay. I know this is a bit of a wild swing, but do you see yourself doing figure painting in that sense?
figurative
Figure,
painting.
yeah.
You mean for in the future?
Oh, human figure portraits.
Oh, portrait painting.
Yeah, figures.
Yeah, it's I'm still exploring. Trying. I don't think I have a style in a particular style in portraiture painting, but I do love portraiture painting, and I admire the I have particular styles that I like, but the reality for me is I need to find time. I do portraiture, probably more with my students. I have a student here today. Yeah, but that's quite luxury for me. But yeah, it's a possibility. Yeah, I do want to develop something. Yeah, on that line. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I did love, the portrait you, painted for Dr. Jiao Yu.
Oh yeah. Oh thanks.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to know you because of that painting.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that
Yeah, and again, for those portraits, I try to combine my understanding of the landscape into the
one. Yeah, I
Yeah,
feel like a bit soft and not too so vivid or like not so obvious in the portrait, not so busy. I can feel a bit the Chinese feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like
Yeah,
that. That's
yeah.
why it stands out.
Yeah, so that one I reduced the contrast between the light and shadow, and I reduced it. Yeah, and
A
then
bit abstract, but still, capturing
Flat,
the
yeah.
I really like
Yeah.
that.
thanks.
So are you saying actually, to paint a portrait actually takes more time?
It does.
I didn't know.
Yeah, like in the olden times, the painter will charge according to how many fingers they're gonna appear on the painting. Yeah, that tells a lot. Yeah, in the Renaissance time. Yeah. So when you accept a commission, and among the list, they're gonna ask how many fingers you want to include. Yeah.
For you right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it does take more time.
I see your paintings are full of light, but I was quite curious that you seem to like diffuse light, and I see only in that one and the slide there the direct light hitting down the mountains.
Reflection. Yeah.
So I find it quite interesting that your light is diffused rather than direct.
Yeah, and those moments happen quite randomly. Yeah, when I was painted up to that point, and because I can already have a good overall look, I can already anticipate what sort of result I'm going to get, and then at those moments I decide, probably some popping up reflection will make it look better. So yeah, random decisions, those two. But yeah, thank you for noticing them. Yeah, and that for me, after I added the reflection on the mountain, it just feels like the last ray of light before the sun completely goes down, something like that. That sort of feeling. Yeah.
Right. Maybe should I pass it back to Isabel? Do you want to? Yeah. Okay, right. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. And we can probably have more informal chat after we wrap up here. All right, thank you.
Thank you.